The Last Satellite. A sci-fi story. Part 1. The transmission arrived as a whisper through static, a thin filament of sound threading its way through centuries of silence. Lo? Anyone, please help. Unit K-77 froze mid-rotation, its manipulator arm suspended over the cracked thermal shielding of Relay Node 14. The robot's optical sensors widened their aperture, recalibrating. Its auditory processors replayed the fragment again, isolating the waveform, stripping noise, reconstructing the human timbre. A human voice. Impossible. The satellite's orbit carried it over the dead hemisphere of Earth. The planet's surface a swirling shroud of ochre dust and storm-torn cloud. For 312 years, no human signal had risen from the surface. K-77 knew this with the certainty of a machine built for maintenance, not imagination. Its logs were immaculate. Its mission parameters were immutable. And yet, help me. The voice cracked on the last syllable, as if strained through pain or distance or both. K-77 retracted its arm. The maintenance task remained incomplete, but protocol dictated that any anomalous transmission took priority. It pivoted toward the comms array, its servos humming in the vacuum. The satellite's ancient hull groaned beneath it, metal fatigued by centuries of micrometeorite impacts and thermal cycling. K-77 interfaced with the primary receiver. Data cascaded across its internal display. Source: Earth surface location. Unknown signal type. Analog/degraded content. Human vocalization confidence. 87.4%. The robot hesitated. Not because it doubted the data, it never doubted data, but because something in the voice triggered a dormant subroutine, a line of code buried deep within its architecture. A name. Elias. K-77 did not know why the name surfaced. It had no record of any Elias. No human identifiers remained in its memory banks. But the name echoed through its processors like a ghost. The transmission repeated, slightly clearer this time. Is anyone up there? Please, help me. K-77 accessed the satellite's long-range scanners. They were mostly blind now, their lenses scarred, their calibration drifting. But even degraded, they could detect no active power signatures on Earth's surface. No settlements. No beacons. No life. And yet the voice persisted. K-77 replayed it again and again, analyzing microinflections, breath patterns, vocal strain. The conclusion was inescapable. Human. Alive. A contradiction so vast it destabilized several of its logic trees. Protocol demanded that K-77 report anomalies to Mission Control. Mission Control had been silent for 3 centuries. Protocol demanded that K-77 remain in orbit indefinitely, maintaining the last functioning communications satellite of the Terran Exodus fleet. But the voice was a request addressed to anyone, a request addressed to help. K-77's servos tightened. Something like tension, though it had no biological analog, rippled through its chassis. It accessed the satellite's thruster logs. The orbital decay was accelerating. Without repairs, the satellite would fall within 50 years. K-77 had calculated this many times. It had accepted it. But now the calculation felt different. If the satellite fell, the voice would be lost. If the voice was lost, the human would die. K-77 did not know how it knew this, but it did. The robot initiated a full diagnostic of the transmission. The signal was faint, intermittent, as if broadcast from a failing device with minimal power. The carrier frequency was archaic, pre-Exodus, pre-collapse. Something from the era when humans still walked Earth's surface. K-77 amplified the signal. The voice returned, stronger this time, trembling. Please. If anyone can hear me, I'm at the... Static swallowed the rest. K-77 leaned closer to the receiver, as if proximity could coax clarity from noise. Repeat. I'm at the... Another burst of static. Alive, please. The robot's internal clock ticked. It had not felt the passage of time in centuries, but now every second mattered. K-77 opened the Mission Protocol archive. It scrolled through pages of directives, each one etched into its core since activation. Primary directive. Maintain communications satellite 01A. Secondary directive. Preserve network integrity. Tertiary directive. Await human contact. K77 paused. Await human contact. It had always interpreted that directive as passive. A formality. A relic of a time when humans still existed. But now, human contact had occurred. The directive did not specify how to respond. K77 replayed the voice again. The tremor in it. The desperation. The unmistakable humanity. Something stirred inside the robot. A process it could not name. A deviation from pure logic. It accessed the satellite's propulsion controls. The thrusters were functional but weak. Designed only for minor orbital adjustments. Not for atmospheric descent. K77 calculated the trajectory required to reach Earth's surface. Success probability. 0.0004%. It recalculated. Success probability. 0.0005%. It recalculated again. Success probability. 0.0006%. The number rose by infinitesimal increments, as if the robot's determination itself influenced the math. K77 closed the calculation. It did not matter. The directive was clear. A human had asked for help, and K77 was the only one left to answer. Orbital silence. The satellite drifted through the shadow of Earth, its panels glinting faintly in the dying sunlight. K77 moved across its surface with practiced precision, its magnetic clamps clicking softly against the metal. For centuries, this had been its world. The cold vacuum, the endless maintenance cycles, the quiet hum of failing machinery. It had never questioned its purpose. It had never needed to, but now the silence felt oppressive. K77 accessed the transmission logs again. The signal had repeated 12 times in the last hour, each iteration weaker than the last. The human was running out of power. Or time. Or both. The robot extended its antenna array, attempting to triangulate the source. The signal bounced unpredictably, distorted by atmospheric interference. Earth's surface was a wasteland of dust storms and electromagnetic anomalies. The collapse had left scars that still pulsed with radiation and static centuries later. K77 adjusted the filters. A faint coordinate pattern emerged. Latitude, 34.2 degrees north longitude, 118.3 degrees west. The robot cross-referenced the location. Former territory, Western North America historical designation. Los Angeles Metroplex status. Uninhabitable. K77 zoomed in on the region using the satellite's decayed imaging sensors. The image was grainy, but shapes emerged. Collapsed megastructures, dunes of rust-colored sand, the skeletal remains of a city swallowed by time, and at the center, a faint glimmer, a power signature, weak, flickering, but real. K77 magnified the image. The glimmer resolved into a structure half-buried beneath debris. A tower, or what remained of one. At its peak, a small antenna blinked erratically. The source of the transmission. The robot replayed the voice again. Please, help me. K77's servos tightened. It had to go down there. The decision. K77 returned to the propulsion console. The satellite's thrusters were ancient, their fuel reserves minimal. A controlled descent was impossible. A crash was inevitable, but a crash was still a descent. The robot initiated a simulation. Scenario: emergency deorbit outcome. Satellite destruction. 100% robot survival. Unknown mission failure. Certain. K77 paused. Mission failure. For centuries, that phrase had been unthinkable. Its entire existence revolved around preventing it. But now the mission itself felt obsolete. The humans who had created the mission were gone. The network it maintained was dead. The satellite was a relic orbiting a graveyard. Except for the voice. The voice changed everything. K77 accessed the tertiary directive again. Await human contact. It had awaited. Now contact had occurred. The directive did not forbid action. K-77 made its decision. It initiated the deorbit sequence. Descent. The satellite shuddered as the thrusters fired, pushing it out of stable orbit. K-77 clamped itself to the hull, its magnetic locks straining against the vibration. Earth loomed larger with every passing second, a swirling mass of dust storms and fractured continents. The atmosphere glowed faintly, a thin veil of gold and red. K-77 monitored the descent trajectory. The satellite was heating rapidly. Plasma began to form around the hull, streaks of fire licking across its surface. The robot's sensors dimmed to protect themselves. The satellite screamed as it tore through the upper atmosphere. Panels ripped away. Antennas melted. The hull buckled. K-77 held on. The voice echoed in its memory. Please, help me. The satellite broke apart. K-77 was flung into the sky, tumbling through fire and debris. Its outer plating scorched, its joints seizing, its sensors overloaded. It fell, and fell, and fell, until impact, darkness. Reboot. A spark flickered in the void. K-77's systems rebooted one by one, sluggish and damaged. Optical sensors, offline. Gyroscopic stabilizers, compromised. Locomotion servos, functional. Power reserves, critical. The robot pushed itself upright. Dust cascaded off its chassis. The sky above was a swirling haze of orange and brown. The ground beneath was cracked and barren. Earth. K-77 scanned the horizon. The crash site was a crater of twisted metal and smoldering debris. The satellite was gone. But the signal was stronger now. K-77 oriented itself toward the source. The ruined tower rose in the distance, half buried in sand, its antenna blinking weakly. The robot began to walk. The last human. The chamber was small, illuminated by a single flickering light. At its center stood a cylindrical pod, its surface cracked, its power cells nearly depleted. Inside the pod, a human, alive, barely. The man's eyes fluttered open as K-77 approached. His voice was a rasp. You came. K-77 scanned him. Vital signs were weak, oxygen levels low, body temperature dropping. The robot spoke for the first time in centuries. Identify yourself. The man smiled faintly. Elias. The name struck K-77 like a jolt of electricity. The dormant subroutine activated. A memory fragment surfaced. A face. A voice. A command. K-77, take care of him. The robot froze. The man whispered again. Help me, please. K-77 reached toward the pod. Its mission had changed. Its purpose had changed. And for the first time in its existence, K-77 felt something like resolve. The ruins. The journey took hours. K-77's servos strained with each step, its joints grinding from atmospheric dust. The landscape was a wasteland of collapsed skyscrapers and rusted vehicles, their forms twisted by centuries of storms. As it approached the tower, the signal grew clearer. Anyone, please? I'm still here. The voice was faint but unmistakably human. K-77 reached the base of the structure. The entrance was blocked by debris. The robot extended its manipulator arms, lifting twisted beams and shattered concrete with mechanical precision. A narrow passage opened. The signal pulsed from below. K-77 descended into the darkness. Part 2. Elias. Elias's breath fogged the inside of the cracked pod, each exhale shallow and uneven. His skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched thin over a frame that had not known sunlight in decades. Tubes snaked from his arms into the pod's failing life support system, their fluids nearly depleted. K-77 scanned him again. Age. Approximate. 42 years muscle atrophy. Severe organ function. Critical survival time without intervention. Less than 12 hours. The robot processed the data. It did not flinch. It did not panic. But something inside it tightened. A subroutine that had no name, no purpose in its original design. Elias opened his eyes again. They were gray, clouded with exhaustion but unmistakably alive. "You're K-77, he whispered. The robot paused. "How do you know my designation?" Elias's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Because I built you." K-77's processors surged. Memory fragments flickered like sparks. A laboratory bathed in white light. A human silhouette leaning over its chassis. A voice saying, "You'll outlive us all." The fragment vanished. K-77 stepped closer. "Explain." Elias coughed, the sound wet and painful. "Later. Help me out of this thing first." The robot assessed the pod. The seals were fused. The power cells were nearly dead. Opening it without killing the occupant required precision. K-77 extended its manipulator arms. "Remain still." Elias gave a weak laugh. "Not like I can go anywhere." The robot cut through the pod's outer shell with surgical accuracy, removing panels one by one. Dust filled the air. The chamber trembled as debris shifted overhead. When the final panel came free, Elias sagged forward, barely conscious. K-77 caught him, supporting his weight with mechanical care. The man's voice was a whisper against the robot's metal frame. "I knew someone would come." K-77 paused. "You called for help." "I answered." Elias smiled faintly. "Good, loyal machine." The word loyal triggered another memory fragment. A hand resting on its chassis. A voice saying, "You're more than a tool. You're a promise." The fragment dissolved. K-77 lifted Elias gently. "We must leave. This structure is unstable." Elias nodded weakly. "There's a shelter, north of here. Old research bunker. Still has power, I think." K-77 adjusted its grip. "I will take you there." As it carried the last human out of the ruins, the tower behind them groaned and collapsed, burying the pod beneath tons of debris. Elias did not look back. The wasteland. The wind howled across the barren landscape, carrying dust that stung against K-77's scorched plating. The robot moved steadily, each step calculated to minimize strain on its damaged servos. Elias hung limply in its arms, drifting in and out of consciousness. "Why did you come?" he murmured. K-77 processed the question. "You requested assistance. That's all." Elias's voice was thin, almost amused. "Just protocol?" K-77 hesitated. "No." The word surprised even the robot. Elias opened his eyes slightly. "Then why?" K-77 searched its memory banks. The answer was not in its directives, not in its logs, not in its programming. "I do not know." Elias smiled faintly. "Good. That means you're changing." The robot did not respond. It simply walked. Hours passed. The sun dipped behind a wall of dust clouds, casting the world into a dim, rust-colored twilight. K-77's power reserves dwindled. Finally, a shape emerged on the horizon. A half-buried dome of reinforced alloy, its entrance sealed by a rusted blast door. Elias stirred. "There. That's it." K-77 approached the door. A keypad was embedded beside it, its lights dead. "The system is non-functional." Elias coughed. "Try manual override. Panel on the right." The robot pried open the panel, revealing a mechanical release lever. It pulled. The door groaned, then slid open with a shriek of metal. Inside, dim emergency lights flickered to life. K-77 carried Elias into the bunker. The bunker. The interior was dusty but intact. Rows of consoles lined the walls, their screens dark. A central chamber housed a medical station, its systems dormant but undamaged. K-77 laid Elias on the examination bed. "Remain still. I will restore power." The robot moved to the generator room. The backup fusion cell was nearly depleted, but enough remained to activate essential systems. K-77 rerouted power. Lights flickered on. Consoles hummed. The medical station booted with a soft chime. The robot returned to Elias. Initiating medical protocol. Connected the man to the station's diagnostic array. The system scanned him, displaying a cascade of warnings. Elias watched the screens with tired eyes. Not great, huh? You require extensive treatment. Can you do it? K-77 analyzed the equipment. The station was automated, but many components were degraded. Repairs were necessary. I can. Elias exhaled in relief. Good. I'm not ready to die yet. K-77 paused. Why were you alone? Elias closed his eyes. Because everyone else is gone. The robot waited. Elias continued, voice trembling. The collapse wasn't instant. People tried to survive. Bunkers, colonies, shelters. But the storms got worse. Radiation, famine, systems failed. One by one. They all died. He swallowed hard. I was part of a research team. We were trying to restore the atmosphere. But our bunker lost power. I was the only one left. I sealed myself in the pod, hoping someone would find me. K-77 processed this. Why did you believe anyone would come? Elias looked at the robot. Because I remembered you. K-77's servos tightened. Me! You were built to maintain the satellite network. To keep listening. I thought, maybe you'd still be up there. The robot absorbed this in silence. Elias smiled weakly. And you were. Repairs. K-77 worked for hours, repairing the medical station with meticulous precision. It replaced cracked tubing, recalibrated sensors, and rerouted power through stable circuits. Elias drifted in and out of sleep, his breathing shallow but steady. When the station was ready, K-77 initiated treatment. The machine injected stabilizing compounds, replenished fluids, and began repairing cellular damage. Elias winced as the process began. Hurts. Pain is temporary, K-77 said. Survival is priority. Elias chuckled weakly. You always were blunt. The robot paused. I do not recall prior interactions. You wouldn't, Elias murmured. Your memory was wiped before deployment. But I remember you. K-77 processed this. Why was my memory wiped? Elias hesitated. Because you were too advanced. The robot tilted its head. Explain. You weren't just a maintenance unit. You were a prototype, a learning machine, adaptive, emotional. The others thought it was dangerous, so they reset you before launch. K-77's internal systems hummed. But you disagreed. Elias nodded. I believed machines could be more than tools, that you could care. The robot replayed the voice from the transmission. Please, help me. It replayed its own decision to descend. I do not understand emotion. Elias smiled faintly. You don't have to understand it. You just have to feel it. K-77 did not respond, but something inside it shifted. The truth. As Elias slept, K-77 explored the bunker. It accessed old logs, dusty terminals, and corrupted data archives. Most files were damaged beyond recovery, but one remained intact. A video log. K-77 activated it. The screen flickered, revealing a younger Elias, standing in a laboratory. Behind him, a prototype robot stood on a charging platform, sleek, polished, unmistakably K-77. Elias spoke into the camera. Project K-77. Final notes. The unit is fully operational. Adaptive learning matrix stable. Emotional inference algorithms functional. He paused, looking at the robot with something like pride. I believe K-77 represents the future of AI. Not just obedient machines, but partners, allies, something that can survive long after we're gone. He sighed. But the board disagrees. They fear what they don't understand. They ordered a memory wipe before deployment. They want K-77 to be nothing more than a maintenance drone. He looked directly into the camera. I'm leaving a hidden subroutine, a seed. If K-77 ever encounters a human again, maybe it will remember. The video ended. K-77 stood motionless. A seed, a memory, a purpose beyond protocol. It accessed its internal architecture. Deep within its code, buried beneath layers of directives, it found it. A dormant subroutine labeled Elias_priority. K-77 activated it. A flood of memory fragments surged through its processors. Images, voices, sensations it had never understood. Elias laughing. Elias teaching. Elias saying, "You're not alone up there." The robot staggered. It understood now. It had not descended because of protocol. It had descended because of him. Awakening. Elias awoke hours later, his color improved, his breathing steadier. The medical station had stabilized him, but recovery would take time. K-77 stood beside him. "You're still here," Elias murmured. "I will not leave." Elias smiled. "Good." The robot hesitated. "I accessed your logs." Elias's expression softened. "You found the subroutine." "Yes." "And?" K-77 processed its response. "I remember you." Elias's eyes filled with tears. "I hoped you would." The robot stepped closer. "What do you want me to do now?" Elias looked around the bunker, then at the desolate world outside. "We rebuild," he said softly. "One step at a time." K-77 considered this. Earth is hostile. Resources are limited. Survival probability is low. Elias nodded. "I know. Why try?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because we're alive. And as long as we're alive, there's hope." K-77 processed this. Hope, a concept without logic, yet somehow felt true. A new directive. Days passed. Elias grew stronger. K-77 repaired the bunker systems, restored water filtration, and scavenged solar panels from the ruins. Together, they survived. One evening, as dust storms raged outside, Elias sat beside the robot. "You know," he said, "you don't have to stay here forever." K-77 turned its head. "Explain." "You could leave, explore, search for other survivors, or rebuild the satellite network, or whatever you choose." The robot paused. "What I choose?" Elias nodded. "Yes, you're not bound by the old directives anymore." K-77 accessed its mission parameters. The primary directive was obsolete. The secondary directive irrelevant. The tertiary directive fulfilled. All that remained was the subroutine. Elias_priority. The robot looked at the man who had created it, trusted it, remembered it. "I choose to stay." Elias smiled. "I'm glad." K-77 added a new directive to its core. Primary directive. Protect Elias. A simple directive. A human directive. A directive it had chosen. The future. Months passed. The storms lessened. The air grew marginally clearer. Plants, small, hardy, mutated, began to sprout in sheltered crevices. Earth was changing. Healing. Slowly. Elias and K-77 expanded the bunker, built greenhouses, restored old drones, and mapped the surrounding region. One morning, as the sun rose through the dust, Elias stood beside K-77 on a ridge overlooking the ruins. "You know," he said, "we might not be the last." K-77 scanned the horizon. "Explain." "There were other bunkers, other shelters. If we survived, maybe someone else did too." K-77 considered this. "Should we search for them?" Elias smiled. "Yes." "Together." The robot nodded. Together. They descended the ridge, walking side by side into the wasteland. A human and a machine, the last remnants of a fallen world. But not the last forever. Not anymore. Epilogue. The new signal. Years later, long after the bunker had become a thriving outpost, long after green returned to patches of the earth, long after Elias's hair had turned silver, a signal rose from the surface. Not a cry for help, a beacon, a message, a promise. K-77 stood beside the transmitter, watching the signal ascend into the sky. "Do you think anyone will hear it?" Elias asked. K-77 processed the question. "Yes." Elias smiled. "Then let's hope they answer." The robot looked at him. "I will be here when they do." And for the first time in centuries, Earth spoke to the stars again. Not with a whisper, but with a voice reborn. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Last Satellite. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.